I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess, and today I am showing you my collection of books by and about the Brontes. So the idea for this video came because I have to clean out my office on campus as I'm no longer going to be a TA next year, so they're kicking me out, which means that all of my nonfiction is coming home. And with that comes all of my nonfiction about the Brontes. So in past videos where I have wanted to reference some of these biographies that I've read, especially Juliet Barker's The Brontes, which is my favorite piece of nonfiction ever, I've had to put in a little picture because I did not have the physical copy at home. And now they're all here. And I was like, I have a pretty extensive Bronte collection, and I thought it would be fun to share it with you all. So there are going to be 3 categories, but also kind of 4 categories. So I'm going to show you kind of my main copies of the novels, which are the ones that I read from now. And then I have some special copies of the novels. Then there will be biographies. Then there'll be critical works on the Brontes, and then there will be graphic novels. So actually there's 5 categories, right? 5, I can count. 5. For some background about why I have so many books about the Brontes, other than I love them, which I do, is I initially started my academic career thinking I was going to be a Bronte scholar because I love them so much. And while I do still want to do some academic work with the Brontes, I have shifted more to underread women writers of the Victorian period, but the Brontes still have my heart. So let's jump into my collection. So we'll start with my main reading copies of the novels, and we will begin with my Oxford World classic, Jane Eyre. I have had this since I was 15. I bought it in Borders, possibly. Was it Borders? It might have been Borders. It was either Borders or Barnes & Noble. I can't entirely remember which one, and I have kept this copy. This is actually my only copy of Jane Eyre, which is fascinating because I have multiple copies of most of the others. But yeah, love Jane Eyre. You can see my little empty space on the shelf where these books all go. Next, we go into my Penguin Classics editions. First up is The Professor, which is the old Penguin Classics version instead of the newer one, which kind of pissed me off, but oh well, it's just The Professor. It's not that big of a deal. And we have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, one of my absolute favorites. Shirley, which I need to reread. Villette, which I also need to reread. And then, of course, Wuthering Heights. This was my first copy of Wuthering Heights, given to me by my Aunt Pat, who has sadly passed away. She is the one who started me on classic literature. She gave me this. She gave me Pride and Prejudice. She gave me The Mill and the Floss. So many other books that she gave to me. So this is a very special copy to me. And it's a little bit beaten up because of how much I've read it. I've read this book a lot. Then I have Agnes Grey in the Modern Library Classics edition, which is a very nice edition, but it doesn't match anything else, but that's okay. I kind of do want to get penguins of Agnes Grey and Jane Eyre just to have them, but I feel like that's kind of wasteful. I also have this Norton Critical Edition of Wuthering Heights, which is one of many Wuthering Heights copies that I own. I have 4, actually I have 5 because there's one at my parents' that they just bought for me. But I consider this my travel copy. So when I went to England for my master's, I took this copy with me because if anything happened to the copy my aunt gave me, I would be devastated. This is also my lending copy. So when my Nana wanted to reread Wuthering Heights, she was like, "Can I borrow your copy?" I was like, "Yeah, you can borrow this one," because I don't mind if anything happens to this one. Now we move into some of my more special editions of the novels. This first one is a copy of Wuthering Heights that is illustrated by Brenda Breeson. This actually belonged to my cousin, Becky, and you can see that she has signed her name multiple times on the front page. So I don't know how I ended up with Cousin Becky's copy, but I did. The illustrations are really fun. Kathy in the window. Oh, creepy. And I just really enjoy flipping through the illustrations. I don't think I've actually read the book from this copy, but it is a Macmillan Classics edition. And it's pretty old, 1963. So look at this illustration of Lockwood and Nellie. It's just so fun. And I think it's cool that it belonged to my older cousin. Next is another special copy of Wuthering Heights. And it is in French. Le Vent des Monts. So I went through a phase of thinking that I would be able to read books in French, which I do want to be able to read books in French, but this was several years ago. And the advice I always hear for reading books in French is to read something you're familiar with. I was like, I'm familiar with Wuthering Heights. I'll get a French version of Wuthering Heights and read it. I have not read it, but I have it. If I do decide that I want to read it, it is in French, in fact. And it is published by G.F. Flammarion? Not familiar with it, but it's a cute little copy. And then we have a special set of 4. This is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, Shirley, Villette, and The Professor in a bind-up, along with poems and miscellanea. So these are very cute. I got these at a church book sale. They used to belong to the Tuftonboro Library, which is near where we have our lake house. So what's irritating is that they did not give up the copies of Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, and Agnes Grey. They kept those. So I don't have the full set, which is a little bit irritating to me, but they are very beautiful. So this is the Bronte's The Heather edition, published by Alan Wingate in 1949. And they're just so pretty. So this one has from Charlotte, the stories from Angria, The Professor, Emma, which is a fragment she was working on before she died, and her poems, and then Emily Bronte's poems and Anne Bronte's poems. And then I just have all of them like this. They're very pretty. This is actually the editions that I first read all 4 of these in. And then when I started my PhD and was buying a bunch of books for my exams, I was like, I should just get proper copies because these are old and delicate and like I probably shouldn't have been reading them anyway. And that ends my collection of the novels, which, damn, I've got a lot of them. And there's more. Because now we're moving into the biographies, which I have quite a few of as well. First up is probably the most recent of these. This is Charlotte Brontë, A Fiery Heart by Claire Harmon. I loved this. This is so good. It focuses just on Charlotte, of course. And look at these end papers. Oh, such a good book. It is published as just Charlotte Brontë, A Life in the UK, I believe, and it has an even better cover over there. I'm kind of mad I didn't buy it over there, but I'll forgive myself. Next is the only one of these I actually haven't read. This is the Brontes' A Life in Letters by Juliet Barker. So this takes their letters and is putting them in chronological order and giving some context for them. I did start this, but oh yeah, hey, here's my bookmark. I got to page 35. But then I just didn't have time. I forget when I started it. But I do intend to get back to this at some point because I love Juliet Barker's work. You're gonna see her again in this video. And she's just so good at what she does. And then we have one that doesn't have a proper cover. It has like a case. This is Elizabeth Gaskell's The Life of Charlotte Brontë. It is actually a Folio Society edition. It's very lovely. So this was actually the very first Brontë biography published the year after Charlotte died. Elizabeth Gaskell worked with Charlotte's father, Patrick Brontë, and her husband, Arthur Bell Nichols, although they ended up not being portrayed very great in this book, I will say. So this is a really great read. It's beautifully written. It tells a great story. It is not the most accurate. So it is very important to read this in conjunction with another Brontë biography, probably The Brontes by Juliet Barker, or if you're looking for something shorter, The Brontë Myth by Lucasta Miller, which we will talk about in a moment. We then have A Life of Emily Brontë by Edward Chittim. So this is actually one of two Chittim books that I've read. He also wrote one called The Birth of Wuthering Heights, but I don't own that copy. So this is a biography focused on Emily, which involves some speculation because we don't have a whole lot about Emily, whereas we have quite a lot about Charlotte. So there are some speculations in here, but I thought this was really interesting. He presents the theory that Emily Brontë may have had an eating disorder, which I find fascinating. So I enjoyed this. I should reread it sometime. Then we have The Brontë Cabinet, 3 Lives and 9 Objects by Deborah Lutz. This is a really interesting biography because it focuses on objects that we have that belong to the Brontes and tells their life through those objects. So the objects are things like their tiny books, the collar that belonged to Emily Bronte's dog Keeper, and other things like that. So it's super fascinating to look at their lives through the lenses of these items that they owned and touched and that were important to them. Fascinating. And then we have one that I just mentioned, The Brontë Myth by Lucasta Miller. This is fascinating because it actually dissects all the previous Brontë biographies to kind of break down where the myth of the Brontes starts and where the real life biography is. Super good. I think this would be really helpful to read while reading Elizabeth Gaskell's The Life of Charlotte Brontë, especially if you're like, I don't have time for one of the longer ones, like the one I'm about to show you, because this is fairly short. Really great. And then the last of the biographies, and this is honestly what I think is the best biography of them. This is The Brontes by Juliet Barker. Yes, it is huge. This is because it is a biography of the entire family, starting with Patrick Brontë and sadly ending with Patrick Brontë because he outlived all of his children. But this focuses on every single member of the family, including their mother, their sisters who died early on, their Aunt Branwell, and of course, their brother Branwell. This is just like the definitive biography of them. It's so good. It's so well researched. It's actually interesting to read. Made me cry a bit. Not gonna lie. I bought it at the Brontë Parsonage Museum. So it has a little stamp that, I don't know, makes me happy. And that is it for the biographies. Now we are going to move into some of the more critical works, which I don't have a whole lot of because I usually just get those out of the library, but there are a few that I have bought. This first one is Bloom's Modern Critical Interpretations, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. So it is edited with an introduction by Harold Bloom, who, I'm gonna be honest, I hate Harold Bloom. That's like a hot take for some people, I think. I don't know about here on YouTube, but in academia, that's a hot take sometimes. He's very dismissive of Emily Brontë in this introduction. Don't like him. But this has various essays regarding Emily Brontë, including one by Virginia Woolf, a piece from Sandra Gilbert and Susan Kubar's The Madwoman in the Attic, several other essays that are really interesting with different critical perspectives on the novel. I think I bought this in undergrad when I was doing a paper on it, but I don't really remember. Next up is one with no real cover for absolutely no reason, but this is Approaches to Teaching Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, edited by Sue Lonoff and Terry A. Hassler. This is another collection of essays that's focused on actually teaching Wuthering Heights in the classroom. This was put out by the Modern Language Association. They were having a sale, so I picked this up along with another one that you'll see in a moment. I haven't actually read it. I should do that. This next one is another that I bought at the Brontë Parsonage Museum. This is The Oxford Companion to the Brontes by Christine Alexandra and Margaret Smith. This is, I guess you would call it a reference material. So anything that's related to the Brontes, you can look up in here alphabetically. You can look up the names of their friends and read a bit about that. You can look up places that they were at. You can look at their works. It's super helpful. I've used it in some papers and I like having it. So if you just want more information about something that you come across in one of their biographies or in one of their books, you can look it up and be like, hey, who's William Ashworth? Who we then find out is a character in one of Charlotte Bronte's stories. I didn't know that. And then the last one for the critical works is Approaches to Teaching Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, edited by Diane Long Hoveller and Beth Lau. I haven't read this either. I probably should since I just taught Jane Eyre. That would have been good. Like the one on Wuthering Heights, this is from the Modern Language Association. I bought them on sale. I don't know why this one has a cover and the other one doesn't. It has several essays on various aspects of teaching Jane Eyre. All right, we are almost done. We have one category left that only has 2 books, and this is graphic novels. The first one I have here is Glasstown, The Imaginary World of the Brontes by Isabel Greenberg. This is simply stunning. Oh my God. So it is based on the Glasstown writings that the Brontë siblings did when they were younger. They had this world called Glasstown that they wrote different stories about all together. This is set after the deaths of Branwell, Emily, and Anne, and it is Charlotte kind of processing her grief using the Glasstown stories. It's super interesting. The art is great, and I just loved this so much. And this last one is actually another biography. This is Charlotte Brontë Before Jane Eyre by Glynis Fox. So it is a graphic novel biography focusing on Charlotte's life before she wrote Jane Eyre. So we have stuff with Glasstown in here, we have stuff with Cowan Bridge, and then it ends, I believe, with her working on the novel. Or maybe getting it published. I'm not entirely sure, I don't remember. This was a lovely little biography. If you're looking to introduce the Bronte's biography to younger readers, I think this is a great way to do it, because obviously it's a graphic novel, so there's images, it's easier to read than something dense like Juliet Parker's The Brontes, and it gives you an overview of the life without diving into like super complicated details. So I thought this was great. Also, it has the dogs on the cover. Yay. All right. That is my Brontë book collection. I told you I have a lot. I really like the Brontes. So let me know down in the comments below, what books by or about the Brontes do you own? Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? Is there an author that you just have a ton of books by and about? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.